Today, I want to talk about aging. I know this is not a particularly popular conversation. In fact, many folks like to avoid it completely. But I think it's critical that we speak about our latter years and ways in which we can improve our quality of life as we age. If only our bodies didn't change. If only our memories stayed completely intact. If only as our cells age and our skin sags and our steps falter, that there were ways in which we could prevent all that. So today I want to talk about a program that may in fact help keep us engaged, active, and a part of a community, and how that imparts health and happiness as we age. Welcome, this is Gyno Curious. I'm your host and creator, Dr. Amy Novatt. We are here to investigate what it means to be a healer and to be healed. Please send your comments or concerns to radiofreerhinecliffe.org or to gynocurious@gmail.com. Please consider giving us 5 stars on whatever platform you listen to help promote the show and share with others. So today I have asked Dee Hernandez to speak with me. Dee is the executive director of Riverhouse, an adult daycare center in Cos Cobb, Connecticut. Riverhouse is an accredited medical model adult daycare center where aging adults come to spend their days in a fun, safe, and supportive environment. Welcome, Dee. Thank you for being with me here today.
Hi, Amy. Thank you for having me. So excited to be here.
I'm so glad you could join me are you in Connecticut? Are you actually living here?
No, I live in Westchester. I'm a New Rochellian.
Aha.
But born and raised in New York.
Okay.
So I'm kind of like all over the place right now. Spread thin. But I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
Great. So let's just start with you. How did you come to work in the community of the aging and the work that you're doing?
Well, I've been in social service field for about 25 years. I have my bachelor's degree in forensic psychology. So I've always found social services and psychology fascinating. So when I got out of college, with a bachelor's of forensic psychology, what do? You go into social services. So I started as a case manager and kind of moved my way along the ranks. I've worked for many big nonprofits throughout the tri-state area. I've worked for the city, the Department of Homeless Services, and the Human Resource Administration. And after COVID and having my children, I realized that I needed something that was more in line with my needs. And my father is an older adult. Obviously, he's an older adult. He lives with me as well. So I needed to be there for my family. And commuting to the city every day from Westchester was not an option for me. So I started looking around and I found a position at the YMWHA in Washington Heights as their senior center director. And it was something new and different that I had never done. And I very quickly realized that I love working with older adults. Their energy, their passion, they just want to enjoy life. And, you have some that are kind of like, they're tired, they're grumpy, but for the most part, they just want to enjoy whatever years it is they have left. So it was a vibrant community in Washington Heights. I always tell people if you watch the movie or the play in the Heights, that is what is happening in Washington Heights. The music, the culture, the food, the relationship, the community. So I was there for several years and I loved it, but the commute was just too much. So one day after 2.5 hours trying to get to work, I said, I have to make another change. And I found this position in Connecticut and the commute is amazing. And I was like, well, let's try it. And I realized that the change would mean me having to leave this community and this family that became my extended family to me. I loved the participants, the members of the Y. And so it was a hard decision to make, but I had to do, once again, what was best for my family. And so I transitioned over to Greenwich. It's at Cos Cobb. And it has been one of the most amazing experiences, best decisions I've made. It's such a family-oriented place. We really are looking at not only our participants, but also our staff. And they've been there for over 20 years. They're so invested in the clients, in their families, and the caregivers, in the community. And it's just such an amazing place. The second you walk in the door, you feel the energy, you feel the liveliness, you feel the love that they will have for each other. And I don't feel like I'm working. So it's been a great experience.
Oh, I'm so glad. And I would imagine it's quite a different community than what was going on in the Heights.
Yeah, we have we have kind of higher functioning, lower functioning participants. We have about 79% of our participants are suffering from some cognitive impairment, whether that be Alzheimer's, dementia, brain trauma. Some of them are amputees, some have Parkinson's. They all come to us for a different reason. But I think that at the root of it, they're all there because they need socialization. They need a loving, caring, as you said, safe, friendly, and fun environment. And so not only for them, but also for their families, it's a place where they can send their loved ones and know that they're in a place where they're going to be engaged and they're going to be taken care of and they're going to be loved the way they would be at home, which I think is so important. My grandmother lives in the Bronx and she has a home health aide that comes every day and she has no socialization. And a lot of the resources that we offer on site, she doesn't have access to them where she lives. And I think all the time about how her dementia would, just where she is at this point in her life, how much she would benefit from this daily interaction, these really well curated, prepared meals, the games, the activity, the therapeutic exercises, and just the music. The engagement is so important as you age and as you get older, not only for those that have dementia and Alzheimer's, but for anyone. We learned during the pandemic how important socialization is.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, they coined this term social isolation, but for older adults, they've always been isolated historically.
Yeah.
It's not something that just happened during COVID. So, for all of us younger generation that are like, oh my gosh, I can't talk to my friends. I can't see anyone at work. I'm home. This is their life. This is the life that they live as an older adult. And so for them, it was kind of like, well, we do this every day. But the pandemic made it worse. So we really, since I don't want to say post-COVID, because I think COVID is here and it's never going anywhere, but this new time that we're living in and having COVID be part of our lives, I think that taking into consideration these groups of isolated individuals and figuring out how we can use COVID funding or what we've learned from COVID, as, use those assets to really kind of improve services and kind of broaden our reach for those that we're servicing is so important. And that's the mission that we have, is to make sure that everyone has a place and that our services are accessible and affordable for everyone.
Are adult daycare centers throughout the country?
There are adult daycare centers. We're the only one in Greenwich. The closest other center is in Norwalk, so it's a bit of a trek. It's not right in the area. I know there are some in the surrounding areas, but they're not all medical models, which makes a big difference. We can administer medication. We have nurses on site. We do blood pressure monitoring, weight monitoring. We kind of keep a track and we communicate with their doctors and nurses. We have doctors' orders in place if they're supposed to be taking medication, if they're supposed to be receiving physical therapy. One of our participants is in hospice, so her hospice nurse comes on site and visits her. So we're equipped to handle those types of situations. Not every adult day center is a medical model. There's different certifications you have to get in order to be a medical model. And we're getting a lot of participants coming from outer Westchester. So about 11% of our participants are not from Connecticut at all. And it's because there's a lack of services in their areas.
Yeah.
So we can service anyone as long as they can get to our facility.
And how do they pay for it? How is it funded? Is it public, private? How is it funded?
So some of our clients are full pay, self-pay, and our services are for the day, it's $120. And that includes transportation to and from the center, door to door, with a trained aide who will help them up and down the stairs into their home. A light breakfast, a full hot meal that's been approved, the nutritional value and the breakdown of the meal has been approved and reviewed by a nutritionist, snacks, and then transportation. So it's a full day service. We start at 8:30, and then our participants are leaving around 3:30, heading home. Some families drop them off, and some go on our transportation. We have two buses, one that picks up in Greenwich and one that picks up in Stamford. And some of our clients come on Norwalk Transit or Paratransit, for Westchester residents or Paratransit, and they come on their own or they come on the bus. For those that are not able to afford or that are considered low income, SWACA, which is the Southwestern Connecticut Aging, provides a subsidy, kind of like what Medicaid and Medicare pay for those in New York. And that subsidy will pay for them to come for a certain number of days for them to come to the center.
Great.
And then for those that can't afford we have a sliding scale, and we work with the families to try to make sure that their participation is financially feasible for them.
Why do you think, well, let me back up. When I think about other cultures, particularly other countries, and how they interface with their older population, it feels like they do a better job. Either they're integrating the grandparents into the home in a much more natural way, or there are social services, in every community for the elderly. And in the States, I often think it's analogous to how we treat our children. There's this lack of resources. I mean, kind of deserts where we call them medical deserts where there are no doctors. But think about in the middle of this country, there are probably very few adult day centers. Why? What is your theory about this? Why have we gotten so, I don't know, disrespectful or distance from caring from this group of such, of important people?
I think that just on a personal level, I grew up in a very tight-knit family. My great-grandmother lived with us, my grandmother lived with us, my father's now with me. And it was about taking care of your loved ones. And I think now, just the way the world has changed, we're constantly in this rat race, right? You have to go to work, you have to be there, you have to work this many hours, you have a longer commute. And when you have older family members who need more one-on-one care, and maybe they don't qualify for home health aid services, maybe they don't qualify for 24-hour care, which is in the case with my grandmother, where you need to figure out how you're going to manage your household, how you're going to make it to work, how you're going to be able to afford childcare, how you're going to be able to afford, if you're already paying for childcare, how can you also afford to pay for your older family member to go to childcare as well,
Right.
older adult care. So there's all these financial constraints that I think that are put on us now. And for a lot of people, it's hard. And for those that know about it, they have options. But there's a lot of people that just don't know about the services. And when you don't know, what do? You're home, you're desperate, you're trying to figure things out, you're stressed out, and you don't. And a lot of people end up putting their family members in nursing homes because that is the go-to that everyone knows. Put them in a nursing home. But for us, and I think in the aging community, aging at home gracefully is the main goal. We want people to be able to age at home and to be with their loved ones and be surrounded by their grandchildren, and nieces and nephews. And that adds longevity to their life. That those moments of happiness and also it helps reinforce memories, right? Like if you're in a nursing home and your only memories you have are the very few you have are being at home and knowing your familiar surroundings. And now all of a sudden you're in a nursing home where you don't know anyone and everything is confusing and everything is different. It's very difficult for older adults that have some type of cognitive impairment. So we provide an alternative. You can have your loved one aging gracefully at home with you while you're at work. They're with us. We're taking care of them. And then it also, on a financial perspective, if you can only get a certain number of hours for home health aid, you can save those hours for the evenings. And they're not home alone because during the day they're with their Riverhouse, and in the evenings you have someone at home to stay with them.
Oh, that's an interesting strategy.
It provides alternative options. And for a lot of families that are, culturally, you don't put your family member in a nursing home. You don't put them away somewhere where they're alone. This is an amazing option for them. So the service that we provide, for me, I feel is invaluable. As someone who is living, I am a caregiver and I'm living
right.
this. And, my father's at the age where he's still, he can't really drive now. He has to have cataract surgery. And he's, he gets mixed up a little bit where he's going. I wouldn't say that it's dementia yet, but it's a concern for the future. And so I think planning is so important, and really not only medical planning for our older adults, but also for their caregivers. What do you intend to do? Because they're going to age. It's going to happen. It's like, death and taxes and aging. It's going to happen. So people are not always, it's kind of like, I'll think about it, I'll worry about it later. Later comes like this. Before you know it, it's now. And now you're scrambling. So when people come to us, they're at the point where they're panicked. They're like, I need to get my family number and I need to get them in here yesterday. And so one of the things that we're really trying to do is make sure that we're putting the word out there about the services that we have. So people aren't finding out about us last minute. It's something they can plan for. It's something they can save for. It's something that they can think about. And hopefully with that time and planning, they can make decisions that work for their family without it being pressured.
Yeah, I think that what you're pointing out is a number of things, but specifically the communication and the acknowledgement of the inevitable. That in today's world, we tend to live long lives. So there is going to be, there's going to be a substantial number of years where we may need help, either for physical reasons, mental reasons, all kinds of reasons. And so being able to address those issues when you're healthy, what do I want? What might I need? And then if you're fortunate enough to have family who are going to be participating in some way or another, having the conversation now, again, before it's emergency is so, so critical. But people are so afraid of this. I mean, again, I know in my office when I start talking about planning for, when someone's ill and we're talking about planning for death, dying in death, which obviously has a very different perhaps quality than aging, but maybe not. Maybe it's all in this really scary basket and nobody wants to go there.
Yeah, it is. When people start looking at their own mortality, it's scary.
Yeah.
But even now, I think about it now, as I'm getting older and I feel like I blinked and all of a sudden I was in my 40s. Like, what happened?
Yeah.
And as I'm getting older and I'm finding that my hormones are changing and, everyone's throwing out this pre-menopause word that I don't want to hear. You start to get scared. And it's like, my children are still little and I start thinking about all the things that, I need to have enough energy and I need to be able to do this. And I think that the older you get and the more of a reality it becomes, it is very scary. It's scary for all of us.
Yeah.
And then thinking that, when you're in a position where you have Alzheimer's or dementia or some type of cognitive impairment or sometimes a physical impairment, and you start thinking about all the things you were able to do and the way that you were or the way that you used to live. And those changes are difficult for a lot of people to deal with.
Yeah.
So it's, people want to push it to the back of their minds and that won't be me. I'll deal with it later. I'm different. I know myself. And it's just like, we all change.
Yeah. And, the irony is that, of course, when we organize, when we plan, when we put aside the money, it just empowers us. It just makes us feel less victimized. It makes, it takes away some of that fear. But it's making those first few steps that's so important. Yeah. I love that you pointed out how what feels so critical to me is that as we age, we stay in touch with people of all different ages. In this country, there's this phenomenon of, retirement communities. I remember when I grew up, my grandparents moved to this retirement community in Florida where if I went to visit them, I felt like, an interloper. Their neighbors made it so clear they really didn't want kids around. And it was just a terrible feeling for us. And I think even for my grandparents, but for whatever reason, this is what they made this choice. Is there
a lot of times it's financial? People
yes.
make that choice because of how expensive it is to continue to live where they've lived their whole lives.
Yeah.
Because taxes and this and that and the physical labor, for lack of a better word, that's required when you own a home. When you have your own place and you have to maintain it. They can't always do that.
Right.
So sometimes for them, it's like a necessity. They need to downsize. They need to spend down. They need to, they want to be comfortable. And these retirement communities offer a great option because everyone there is living the same thing.
Yeah.
But, the retirement communities don't want kids. It's a little too loud for them.
It's so funny. And, do you know offhand, is there any science that demonstrates living in a community with all ages is in fact healthier or greater quotients of happiness than if you're living with just people your own age? I'm wondering. I don't know.
I haven't seen any specific studies that I can identify, but there have been a lot of studies about intergenerational households.
Tell me about it.
So many.
Tell me about that.
Especially COVID and how important it is. I once had a supervisor who was a licensed social worker. She specialized in trauma-informed care. And one of the things that she always said to me was how much older adults love to see young faces and the memories that it brings back and the feeling of youth and how special that is. She always talked about it, always. And I never understood the science behind it. But whenever we would have events at the senior center and we would have the children. The Y also had a nursery school, and it had a child nursery school, camp, all these other activities with the children there. And so when we would collaborate with the nursery school to have the kids come in on Halloween or Purim to come in costume, and the way that the older adults, the way their faces would light up, and whether it was that the children reminded them of their own grandchildren or their children when they were younger, it was always this sense of just lightheartedness and fun. And I think that there's something to be said up for that. You know, my children, I have two small children, and my father lives with me. And while they probably drive him crazy 90% of the time because they're very loud and they're running around and
They're
he's
kids.
very old school. Yeah, kids are seen and not heard. I know that when I hear him speaking to other people and talk, he's like, they're driving me crazy. But when he's talking to his friends or his sisters or whoever, he's always talking about their accomplishments and things that they're doing. And, I went with them here and I went with them there. And I hear that sense of hope in his voice, whether he realizes it or not. And for me, my father worked my whole life, right? He worked 6 days a week, and on Sundays he rested. And he had to be quiet and couldn't make too much noise. So seeing him help, he's helping me raise my children. And for him to be able to instill all of those gems, right, that he's carried through his life and teaching them what it means to be responsible adults. And it's, for me, there's magic to it.
Absolutely.
And to be able to see that, it just makes me so happy that he's here to be. My mother passed a few years ago, and the fact that he's able to help me to raise my children and to instill these values in them is so important. And I know that it's important to him too, to be able to show them the things that he's learned, to teach them and share his knowledge with them. I think, so maybe there's no science behind it, but it's magical.
Oh, it strikes me that we talk about institutional knowledge. Like, if you're in a big company and they talk about the people who have been there for years and years, how much the information they have about the industry they're in or the office they work at. And we kind of forget this same phenomenon exists in families around, if you have an older person nearby, it allows kind of if you will, the institution of the family, the institution of love, the knowledge of passing down stories is so important and critical to everyone, to the whole community. It's not just for your father or for your kids. It's for both of them and you, of course. And in this country, we've not supported that way of life at all. And it's such a loss. It's such a loss.
My brother once told me, we had a conversation around, we were talking about, I think it was socioeconomic status and cultures and just kind of the way that we were brought up to raise, to care for older adults. And one of the things he said that was very interesting is he started talking about how much more transient our community has become, where people, especially with remote work, where you can go work and live anywhere. For me, I kind of stayed close to home because my roots were so deep. But for a lot of, especially if you went away to college or you were in some type of boarding school or your sense of your grounding is a little different. And he talked a lot about I always get mixed up with millennials and Gen Zs and all this stuff. I can't remember who's what, right? But I think it's so interesting that there's so much, the world has become so much more accessible that people are willing to go and travel and live and do all these different things that sometimes the older adults kind of get left behind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that has a little something to do with it as well, And there's always, one of my staff and I always talk about how there's, it's usually the daughters, right, who are at home taking care of their older family members, and they're usually the primary caregiver, and it's just so interesting how generationally it kind of passes down, and historically it's the women that are always these caregivers, and they're the ones that nurture and care for them. And not too long ago, I was reading something, they were talking about women and their connections to their mothers, and how at some point, maybe you can explain this, you can definitely explain it better than I can, but how at some point a granddaughter was in their grandmother's womb by, the way the eggs work. And I sat there and I'm sitting there and I was like, oh my gosh. And it kind of was a way to explain like the connection between a mother and her daughter and the child. And I was just like, wow, how amazing our bodies are and things that we do. And maybe that does have something to do with why women are caregivers and why we continue to care for each other.
Yeah.
I love it. That was
Yeah. I love that, there's this whole field of psychology that looks at the intergenerational psychology of trauma, of diaspora, of all kinds of things that happen to families and over generations and how that impacts individuals. And I completely believe it. I really do. It's because sometimes you just can't explain somebody's behavior in any other way, right?
Mhm.
So yeah. So there's something on your website that I didn't know what is the mastermind program? Did I read that on your website?
Yeah. So it was a program that was created so many years ago by a gerontologist who still works in Greenwich as a gerontologist. She runs Mission on Aging, and she's a very well known, connected resource within the community. And she wrote this program that helps work with older adults, kind of where they're at, right, with their needs. And it's a fun way for them to strengthen their cognitive skills. I had a meeting with her a few weeks ago, and one of the things that she was telling me about, because it's a pretty condensed program, but one of the things that she was saying that one of her favorite activities that she loved to do was to have little brown bags filled with different things. And they would let them put their hands in and touch them and guess what it was that they were thinking. And sometimes what they were feeling was not what they were saying, but it broke. And then the memories around it, right? And talking about and really kind of reinforcing this memories and the importance of memories. And what do you remember? What does this scent remind you of? And I think for all the adults with Alzheimer's dementia, that they lose those things, those pieces. Maybe they retain their long-term memory, or maybe only their short-term memory is good. And to be able to sit there and say, this feels like sand. And I remember a time when I was a child where, and sometimes their memories are fuzzy or they're not accurate, but they're telling a story, whether it really happened or something they believe now at this point happened. And it just, they're sharing, right, in a group, and they're talking together, and maybe your memory triggers my memory. So it's an amazing program.
Oh, it's beautiful. And I love the
Yeah.
idea of connecting mentation with sensation, the senses of smell, of touch, and using those as a vehicle in which to trigger memories or to tell stories. What a beautiful, beautiful concept. Yeah.
We find that music really triggers memories.
Mm-hmm.
We have some clients who are, very, very cognitively impaired, but when music comes on, they light up, right? They remember the joy that they had. They want to dance. They feel it in their soul, as they all the time. Like, music hits you and you're deep down.
Yep.
And they remember the lyrics. My grandmother doesn't know who any of us are, but a song comes on and she'll sing, and she'll remember. She doesn't know who's saying, and it's not all the time, but when music comes on, she knows that she has to get up and do it.
Yeah.
And it fills her with joy in those moments when she's kind of usually in a place where her affect is very flat. She's not very, she'll respond if you ask her a question, but she's not going to have a conversation with you. When music comes on, she lights up. And so things like that trigger memories, touch, smell, sound, they're vital in providing therapeutic supports. And we try to make sure that all of our classes and all of our programming is going to assist them in working on their memory, working on their language skills, working on their stability, which is so important as you get older, because you don't realize when you're kind of unsure of the world around you, you get kind of wobbly, right? And you're not sure of your step and your footing. So we try to make sure that all of our classes and all the things that we do really work with them and help them to feel strong.
Yeah.
Mentally, physically. And it's just, you got to come visit.
Oh, I'd love to. It sounds like just a magical place. And one of the things you're pointing out, but we haven't really said it, is, if anyone out there is, has an older person in their life and they're thinking, gosh, there is no adult program around. First of all, don't assume that, because there may be. There are usually offices for the aging in a lot of communities throughout the country. There's probably a national resource, am I right? So start, kind of maybe nationally, and then filter down to the state and then to your community. Because really anything that enables your loved one to engage with others, to be exposed to music and art and and just community can be so empowering for them, and of course help you as a care provider. Because, I know also what it's like to take care of an older parent, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and you often feel isolated when you're doing it without somebody else's help. Resources can be such a problem. We live in a country where Social Security and Medicaid and Medicare are not enough. So it's not an easy time, but anything you can do to help yourself as a care provider, to help your loved one, of course, is worth a pursuit. And I think what you're also sharing with us, Dee, is that, sometimes just small things. If you can take 15 minutes and turn on some music and dance with your older, father, do it. One, it's going to be great for you. Music is just so healing for all of us. I don't care how old we are. But it does engage them. And, I so wish every community had a place like Riverhouse, because it just really sounds so impactful. And again, it's not just for persons with disabilities or with dementia or cognitive deficits. It's anybody who's aging, anybody.
Yes. It's because some people think, oh, well, I can't go there. I don't have Alzheimer's. I don't have dementia. But not all of our participants do. Some of them come because they want the socialization. Maybe they have a hard time. They can't get around the community by themselves anymore. They can't drive. They can't, there are senior centers as well, where people, if you're still very high functioning, you can get around and do things on your own. There's plenty of places like that. There's other nonprofits in the community where you can age at home and you're involved and participate in activities and things with other people who are also aging at home. And then we have some that they come to the center because they've made friends, and they're living their kind of second life as an older adult. And I go to the tables, I walk around every day they're having lunch or in the morning, and they're laughing and they're joking and they're telling stories and laughing-handed jokes about, and they're making each other laugh and smile, and they're sharing a meal with someone instead of sitting at home and eating alone, which for a lot of it's so depressing. Right?
Oh, awful.
It's so hard. You're cooking for just yourself. And you have to, and then the dangers around cooking when you're older and whatever limitations you have. So you can come to this amazing place where you're right on the river, and the view, I keep saying all the time, like, this should have been a wedding hall, like the view of the river and the sunlight that comes in. And it just really livens the mood. And you can't be in a bad mood when you come to Riverhouse.
That's great.
So
That's great.
Our process is, if anyone's interested or wants more information, they can just call or send us an email at info@theriverhouse.org. And our director of admissions, director of program services will reach out, schedule a meeting with them. They can bring their loved one with them to get a tour. We usually do a guest visit as well, where they can come for the day and try it out, see if they like it. Sometimes, participants have to come a number of times before they finally say, okay, I'll do this. Or before the family feels comfortable bringing them and leaving them. So we work very closely with the families to make sure that they're comfortable and that they feel supported. We're going to be starting our caregivers support group that's going to be held every week. They can come in, they can sit down with a licensed social worker. The community through the senior center offers a caregiver circle, where they provide educational trainings and information to caregivers around aging. When's the right time to stop driving? What's the proper nutrients that you should be having as an older adult? How do you estate planning? How do you have the proper Medicare that you need? Are you getting the right, B, C, D, F? There's so many letters with the Medicare. And if you don't know about it, you could be missing out. So there's so many resources, especially in Greenwich. We've been certified as a safe aging community. And it's a beautiful place just because it's Greenwich. But the fact that we're recognized as a community where you can age gracefully and you can age safely is huge, because in most communities, older adults don't always feel safe.
Yeah. So the individual and the families, absolutely. So I want to remind the audience, if you don't live near, Cos Cobb, Greenwich, Connecticut, again, please do some research. There are usually some resources, even at your local library. There can be a opportunities for the individual to go listen to stories, just strategize and find community, because maybe you have a friend who's got an older father that lives here and so does your mom. Well, maybe have lunch and bring everybody together. Be creative, because it's not always clear just what to do. And I guess, as we finish up, Dee, I just want to talk about, when I think about aging, particularly in the health world, medical world, I often talk about how to age and be healthy, or even how to be in illness with grace and integrity. Can you talk to me about grace and integrity and what strategies folks out there might think about to promote that for their loved ones? You've already spoken a little about it. Yeah.
I think we spoke a little bit about, having this plan in place, right? And finding out what their wishes are. And little hospital, they want to know, do you have a DNR? Have you had these conversations? Who's your healthcare proxy? Who makes these decisions about you? Have you had those conversations with them? And have you done that type of, even if it's not larger scale estate planning, it's just speaking to your loved one and finding out what their wishes are before they can't tell you, or before something, it's too late. So as you said, it's very empowering, and it gives you the sense of I'm making the decisions for myself while I can. And I think that is the ultimate form of respect, and giving someone that dignity and grace to say that I want to know what it is that you want. How can I help you to achieve those goals that you have for yourself, while also trying to make sure that I'm doing my part as a caregiver to make sure, and sometimes it's the simple things. We have many of our participants who their children take them to get their hair done regularly and their nails done regularly. And they come in the sense of pride that they feel because they always did their hair. They always look, dressed to the nines. And the fact that their families still give them that same respect and dignity and do those same things and take the time to take them to the salon and do these things with them. It's so important. And you don't think about those little things, right? You're like, I don't have time, I'm running here, I'm running there. But the same way that you go and you take care of yourself, you have to do that for your family. And it's the same thing with the healthcare appointments, right? I think a lot of people, you have Alzheimer's, you have dementia, people, they're not going to remember when was the last time they had a pap smear or a screening or anything else. And it's the family member who have to remember these things. So we're always telling them, when you schedule for yourself, schedule for them as well. Make sure that you're staying on top of those things. And I think that also falls into, that dignity, right? Making sure that they're functioning properly, that they're feeling well and healthy from the inside out. And I think that all kind of falls into that. And just being able to bring them to a place that it's so beautiful, right? And the experience that they receive while they're there, I think that all falls into that sense of integrity and dignity, and them not feeling like, if for some of our members, they come in and they think that they're coming to work. Right? They're like, I'm coming to work. I got to be at work at a certain time. And they come in and we give them jobs, right? Great. You're in charge of bingo, and you help set up for lunch, and you help us round up the gang for volleyball. We have so many amazing activities. You're one of our singers, and we have music on this day. And those jobs give them that sense of
purpose. Purpose.
And I have to get work.
Yep.
I have to be there. And they're waiting for me. And
yeah, it's great. It's great.
It's all get
the so I guess
from home.
There you go. I know it's a total balancing act. So we are coming to the close. I want to ask you to give me a kind of a, what's the hardest part about your job? Short and sweet. I'm just curious.
I think the hardest part for me is building these relationships with our participants, and then we know that the time there is limited, right? And some of them become so infirm that they need to go into some type of more 24-hour care, and for other families move away. So it's like you're not teaching, right? You have your students for 1 year and then they're going to move on. So for us, I think it's a lot of that transition, right? It's a constant, we have people coming in and we have people going out the back for different reasons. And I think that, you develop these relationships with them and you see them every day and you're invested in their well-being. And then one day they're just not there anymore. And that can be very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you're not working, I like to ask my guests on Gyno Curious, what gives them pleasure? What gives you pleasure?
I love to travel. I love to travel. I love to take my kids to new places and have them experience. I started traveling around 18. I've been to a lot of places. So to be able to take my family and have them have the same experiences, it fills me with joy. Like
Great.
it's something that I really enjoy doing. I love going to the movies. Anytime that I can go see a new movie and have my little, those things, the little things make me really happy. And I love sharing that with my family.
Great. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for joining me on Gyno Curious. I'm so grateful, and I, really admire the work you do. And I think that we've talked about some strategies that our audience can think about. And it's all about communication, and facing our fears, because we all have a fear of our own mortality and the loss of those we love. So thank you for sharing your wisdom with me today, Dee.
Thank you for having me. It was so awesome.
My pleasure.
Thank you for the work you do and for sharing, and, for sometimes it's hard for people to find information. It's being able to join podcasts like this and to learn about things and in a way that's not so textbook and you're using all this medical terminology that people can't understand. I think that this type of conversations really help people to learn and relate.
That's my hope. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I also want to thank Maddie Rosenberg, Matt Mercier, and Jan Hamoud, my co-producers, and to the Epicurean for supporting Radio Free Rhinecliff. Until the next episode next Thursday, please stay well and remember to listen to your instincts and intuitions. They are the greatest of teachers, not to be ignored.